Aight, so we all love our most favorite weapon passives in Nightreign. Yeah, I have my favorites and so do y'all, but which of them are actually most effective on a specific character? Assuming that character is being played well, of course, and what their build even is. I feel like I have a solid understanding of what is generally most effective on certain Nightfarers over others. Now, I want to be clear that the vast majority of these passive effects, especially negations, are good for each character. It's just that some, particularly the more conditional ones, such as damage negation upon landing charge attacks or successive attacks to negate damage, are most effective on some of the cast as opposed to others. So, which are those? Let's get the basics out of the way and clear up any possible confusion. If you already know these facts, then don't worry, I'll keep it brief. Damage negations or attack buffs that involve HP are always going to stack with itself regardless of the percentage value. Meaning, if you have, say, 3 damage negations at full HP's 32%, they're going to stack no matter what. Same rules apply to low HP negations as well. Just know that if it has to do with HP, full or low, it will stack. Many times I've seen players drop the same percentage of full HP negations in their inventory even though they do stack. So if you can fit it in your inventory and maybe an ally doesn't really need one, then you may as well keep it until you get something a bit better. Now, it is imperative to note that stuff such as negation of full HP is great for every single character in the game. Sure, it can be more of a lifesaver for those with lower HP pools like Iron Eye or Revenant, but across the board, it's just nice to have. Other passives that stack, regardless of their percentage, are ones such as improved charge attacks, improved attack power when two-handing, melee attack power, and the projectile drop-off and ranged weapon attack buffs too. All of those stack regardless of their percentage. Okay, where things get a bit tricky and probably divisive are the conditional passives. These involve passives like taking damage, boost damage negation, successive attack related buffs, etc, etc. It's imperative to note that these types of passives only stack with other differing percentages of themselves, not the same version. So if you find an identical version of, say, successive attacks negate damage, the same percentage won't stack with itself, so consider dropping whatever that negation is or passive for another teammate if you have that version already. So to start, let's go with damage negation upon landing charge attacks. I personally find this one to be very good, but that's primarily because I play 2 characters that are really good at proccing it, while they're in Duchess. However, I'd say the character best at utilizing this is Iron Eye, considering he can proc this passive with his charged arrow shots from range, making it extremely safe. Of course, Raider, Wilder, Duchess, Undertaker, you get it. All of the melee characters can benefit really well from this buff. I know some will think Mage when considering Duchess, but Duchess is a hybrid character, just like Undertaker, who can be played in a multitude of ways, and her dagger charge R2 is stupidly good, so yeah, she counts. Damage negation upon successful guarding. While technically any character can use this, come on. There's only 2 that come to my mind when I see this passive, and that's Guardian and Executor. The latter of which can proc it upon using his parry deflects. That said, this is certainly a Guardian favorable passive, I'd say. His whole thing is being the wall and absorbing damage with his great shield, so it goes hand in hand with his playstyle very well. Think it's a pretty easy, yeah, you see a Guardian, give this to the Guardian. Taking damage boosts damage negation. This is another passive that is generally good for every character, as it can be a true lifesaver if you happen to get caught by a big multi-hit attack, or made a mistake and found yourself getting bonked by a few stray hits. It's the best when paired with other negations though, methinks, as a form of life insurance, if you will. That said, I'd have to say the best ones who utilize this are Raider, Guardian, and Undertaker. Each of them like to absorb damage, and especially Raider and Undertaker trade hits to dish out more damage. especially when paired with other negations like damage negation at low HP and having the Bloodborne rally effect in place, which generally you should have on any character you intend to play melee with. Even so, taking damage boosts damage negation is a nice thing for practically every character, especially, again, if you play them in the melee range. Successive attacks negate damage. Ah yes, this seems to be the favorite of most folks, and as a Duchess main myself, it's certainly mine too. So allow me to say with veritable experience that this passive is unironically utilized best by the priestess herself. Now before you call me biased, hear me out. Why is that? Because Duchess can effortlessly proc successive attack buffs against practically every single boss in the game, and it's all thanks to her uncharged dagger heavy attacks. When I tell you that this character can proc that bubble in a single second, I ain't kidding. Now of course, everyone else who uses melee can absolutely make great of this passive. Hell, Wilder has a unique trait of being able to use his hookshot to aid in proccing this buff from a distance. And if you have someone running Dormant Power helps discover fists and they find, say, the Starve Fist, then yeah, it'll work great on that kind of build. It's just, Duchess can do it more safely and arguably faster from the moment she lands in the run. She can also synchronize this extremely well with damage negation upon landing charge attacks by using her charged R2 thrust into the uncharged follow-up slashes, regardless of how many stacks you have applied of successive attacks, because yeah, that's another thing. The more versions of successive attacks negate damage, or anything else relating to successive attack related buffs, you have, the harder it becomes to proc, unless you're playing as Duchess, who by default with her daggers can proc it with just 2 uncharged heavy attacks against any boss in the game with up to 6 stacks of successive related buffs. And she can do all of that safely whilst having a 6-second grace period between those inputs to acquire that delectable bubble. So yeah, it's a great passive for every melee character, but Duchess is simply the successive attacks queen, so I gotta give it to her on this one. Shoutouts to Executor and Scholar though when they're power stancing. They are both excellent at getting this passive to proc up too with their default weapon classes. Damage negation when casting spells. Well, this one should be fairly self-explanatory, but naturally these are best used by our core casters in the game, Recluse and Revenant, with a shout out to Duchess and Undertaker, who again are both hybrid characters and can very easily go into one of their own related spell casting playstyles. But it's gotta be both Recluse and Revenant. They're best used by these two, and they're definitely the two that desire it most. The majority of the time, they both want to be locked in and using either sorceries or incantations for that big damage. So if they can get negation upon just doing the things that they want to do passively, all the better for them, right? Of course, negation at full HP would also be ideal for them to have, being that they are naturally the squishiest characters in the game, and they have lower defense values to boot. That was the bulk of what most defense passives people want to get during a run, depending on their style and the character that they're playing. But what about the offensive passives? Well, again, we'll start with the HP related ones, so that'll be attack power increase while at full HP and at low HP respectively. For attack power at full HP, there's a good amount of characters I feel best benefit from this particular one. I wouldn't say there's a definitive best, but the characters that come to my mind are Iron Eye, Recluse, Duchess, Revenant, characters that generally more times than not are at full HP, be it because they're really good at avoiding damage in general, or that they're far back enough away that more times than their allies they aren't getting hit, A character like Wilder or Raider, I really wouldn't want full HP attack power on. Like for Raider, I would think low HP attack power is better on him because it procs at around half HP. So if he has taking damage, boost negation, and maybe negation at low HP as well, he's fully stacked on that kind of stuff. You can make some really diabolical stuff happen, you know what I mean? So yeah, to go into low HP attack power, characters like Raider, I think best benefits from that passive because he's so tanky. Guardian probably also does benefit from that, but Guardian isn't really the character I think of immediately when I think of a lot of damage. So I'll have to give Raider for that one. For full HP attack power, again, Recluse, Revenant, Duchess, Iron Eye, I think probably are the best ones at utilizing that. Geez, there's way more offensive passive than defensive passive, so let's go with the pre-attack power when two-handing. This should be pretty clear. Characters like Wilder, Raider, Undertaker, those characters who really like to two-hand their weapon, who do a lot of natural high AR, as opposed to, say, Duchess or Executor, who more times than not they're one-handing their weapons. You can two-hand with them, obviously, and benefit from that, but when I see two-handing, I generally think of Wilder, for instance, right? Whereas when wielding two armaments, like power stancing, Executor really benefits from that. The power stance katana moveset, while it is a bit stamina hungry, I do think is very good. Duchess can utilize it with her own power stancing. Wilder can also utilize it very well with power stance jumping L1s with his greatsword. Same thing with Raider with his colossal weapons. So that can be very versatile as well for a number of characters in the cast, but I wouldn't particularly say which of them use it the best, but if I had to say, probably between Wilder or Raider. Then we have improved charge attacks. Improved charge attacks is shockingly good on more characters than you might think. Again, when you think of charge attacks, you're going to think of Raider and Wilder because they use very heavy weapon classes. But it's also very good on Duchess, for instance, because her charge R2 with her one-handed dagger is a thrust attack. And because it's doing thrust damage, her having improved charge attacks, that thrust attack with that little dagger does more than you might think. Improved jump attacks, well, I only really think of Wilder and Raider, you know, ooga booga, kaboom, hit you with my big bonk stick, right? So it's got to go to those two. I would say other characters don't benefit from jump attacks super heavily. Perhaps Undertaker. Improved melee attack power. Melee attack power is generally just one of the best offensive passives in the game. I would say it's actually the best offensive passive in the game because of how much it actually affects. Because it can affect projectiles on certain weapon skills if it has a physical hit attached to it, you know? So for this one, really any melee character, Wilder, Raider, Executor, Undertaker, Duchess if playing her in melee, Scholar, so on and so forth. Any character that you play in melee can use this passive just fine. Now, which character is it best suited for? If we're talking sheer AR damage numbers, then probably Raider, but it really does depend on your relic setup. I speak as a Duchess main here. You can set her relic setup in a way to where you get crazy AR damage on her dagger, and melee attack power will boost that significantly. And if you use stuff like her relic effect, defeating enemies while the art is active, forget about it. The amount of damage you'll do in that time is way higher than what Raiders could be, for instance, but that is also situational, so it's give and take. My point about melee attack power is that it is a very versatile passive because you could give it to Executor while he's using Moonveil, for instance, and it's going to affect the Moonveil projectile. Or you have a Duchess doing a Halo Scythe build. I know we've seen plenty of that. But you give her melee attack power, it's going to infect the actual golden donut projectile of Halo Scythe. So yeah, it's an absolutely cracked passive that is really hard for me to say which character it's best on because it's so applicable to many, many differing scenarios. Then you have things like dash attacks and rolling attacks. For these, I would say probably Raider or Wilder using a colossal weapon. These are really good for colossal weapons, especially the rolling attacks passive, because the rolling attack colossal sword poke is just so good. It's disgusting in normal Elden Ring. It's disgusting here. So if you're running a character that has, say, Dormant Power, help discover her Colossal Swords, or you have a Colossal Sword, and you're playing Wilder, Raider, or a character that has a Strength Relic that can have them go into that very well, it'll be best in that scenario. Improve ranged weapon attacks and projectile drop-off reduced. This is self-explanatory. It's obvious. Yeah, it goes to Iron Eye. Duh, of course it goes to Iron Eye. But the more of these he has, especially the projectile drop-off reduced, the better. And oh boy, improved skill attack power. Oh goodness me, improved skill attack power, all the balancer builds. Yep, here we go. Obviously, if you have any player running the double balancer build, this passive goes to them by default. So which characters are best used on? Well, so many characters can utilize balancer builds effectively. Wilder, Duchess, Executor, Iron Eye can. Raider, Raider's FP's kind of, maybe not so much Raider, but you get it. You know the usual suspects by now. So you see any player using double balancer builds, improved skill attack power, goes to them. But if not, then you really have to look at what each character has for their respective weapons. Like say if Wilder has, or Dorva's Greatsword, right? And no one else really has weapons that have particularly good weapon skills, he should get skill attack power. Or if you have Executor, he's using Rivers of Blood, if he doesn't have double balancers, he should get skill attack power, because not only does it affect his Rivers of Blood, but it would also affect his Suncatcher Holy Slash as well. At least I'm pretty sure it does. So again, skill attack power is one of those passives where it's depending on the context of the run. Speaking of depending on context, improve critical hits. Well, it really depends on the given character's or player's build, right? If you see a Duchess running a crit build, well, she's using a dagger, and her starting dagger has a 3.0 multiplier on crits. So yeah, that's only 1 point below the Misericord. Definitely give her improved crits if you find it. However, if you're playing with an Executor who has the relic passive that gives him greater attack power while reducing his damage negation, you've probably seen by now the absolutely insane critical damage he does with just that alone. So if he's running a crit build on top of that, then yeah, definitely toss him improved crits and make sure he gets it. Improved crits is always a bit of a mixed bag because it's so easy to accidentally steal the crit from another player when you're just trying to R1 mash when an enemy gets stance broken and your character teleports into the crit animation. As a Duchess, this happened to me many times. However, if I had to give it to just one character to give improved crits to at this point in the game, it has to be Executor by far. Another weird one we have is improved thrusting counterattack. This is best used on Iron Eye because his arrows count as a thrusting attack. So with how often he gets to just fire from a distance safely, a lot of times enemies are attacking while he's doing that. So that will count as a thrusting counterattack. So you see that kind of passive, give it to the Iron Eye if he's on the team. And while there are many, many more offensive passives in the game, I wanted to go over the usual suspects you will see throughout the game, no matter what mode you're playing in, be it standard expeditions or Deep of Night. Obviously in Deep of Night, there's way more wacky ones you can encounter, but in general, these are the de facto one. So that's why I wanted to cover those here instead of going really in depth with odd and miscellaneous ones you'll only see once in a blue moon. I also wanted to talk about the Nightfarer specific relic effect passives and which ones I think are best for them. But I realized that combining all that and talking in depth about the Nightfarer relic effects and the weapon passives would make this video way too long. So I decided that I will make that its own separate video most likely too, because otherwise we would be here all day. So that's why we have just the weapon passives for here. Which brings this video up to a close. Now, I didn't talk about every single weapon passive in the game because frankly, there's just so much. I really wanted to just hone in on the core ones that most people actually care about. So If you enjoy content like this from me and you want to see more, then please do consider hitting that like button, subscribing to this little channel that I have here, and I will be catching y'all in the next one where I'm probably going to be talking about the Nightfarers. If it changes though, well, that'll change. Until then though, adios.